He was just a janitor finishing a night shift when the elevator stopped. But trapped beside him was the powerful CEO of a billion-dollar tech empire. As smoke rose and systems failed, one single dad's quick thinking saved more than a building. It sparked a bond that would rewrite both their lives forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video and tell us where you are watching from. Let's jump into the story. Brandon Hale was already having a rough morning. His only clean shirt was now soaked in lukewarm coffee, thanks to a clumsy elbow and a cup that wasn't sealed right. His backpack strap had snapped halfway down the block. Worst of all, he'd missed Nina's school assembly again. Her drawing of their family, carefully colored the night before, was still sitting on the kitchen table, forgotten in the rush. He sighed as he stepped into the elevator of the Tyra building, hoping the ride down would be quick and smooth. The night shift had been long, and all he wanted was to get home, take a shower, and hear Nina's stories about her big day. The elevator doors closed with a soft chime. Floor 49. He leaned against the rail and closed his eyes. He didn't notice that someone else had stepped in. Great timing, a voice muttered. Sharp, impatient. Brandon turned. Beside him stood a woman in a dark pantsuit, a phone pressed to her ear and a sleek tablet tucked under one arm. Her eyes were focused, her mouth a tight line. He recognized her instantly. Mira Lennox, CEO of Lennox Systems, the tech company that designed half of the building's smart features. Brandon straightened instinctively. Us. Brushing dust off his shirt as if it mattered. The elevator hummed along until floor 38. Then, without warning, it jolted and stopped. The lights flickered. The touchscreen controls dimmed. The familiar voice of the AI assistant crackled and then fell silent. Mira lowered her phone. Seriously? She tapped the screen. Nothing. Brandon pressed the emergency button. Her red light blinked, but no voice responded. You've got to be kidding me, Mira said, pacing a little. Brandon gave a small shrug. Guess the smart building decided to take a break. I'm part of the night crew. I usually finish cleaning before most folks show up. Figures. The one time I'm not in a boardroom, I get stuck in an elevator with a mop man. He smiled politely, ignoring the sting. You could do worse. The silence that followed stretched. Mira tapped on her phone, tried to reconnect a signal. Nothing worked. Brandon reached into his pocket and pulled out a wrinkled piece of paper. The corners were bent, and the crayon colors had smudged, but the drawing still made him smile. Mira noticed. What's that? My daughter's drawing. She made it for me last night. Us holding hands. It says me and Daddy forever. Her eyes softened slightly. Cute! Her name's Nina. She's 8. I missed her assembly this morning. Was supposed to be there when she presented her project. Mira leaned against the wall and crossed her arms. Why'd you miss it? Double shift. Rent's due. Bills don't wait. For the next few minutes, the only sounds were distant building hums and the occasional creak of the elevator shaft. Brandon looked at her again. You ever been stuck in an elevator before? Once in college, with a professor who snored. Lucky. You. A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. He continued. I used to work days. Then Nina got older and needed help with homework. Nights made more sense. It's quieter, less traffic in the halls. It's just me, my mop, and a whole lot of talking to myself. Mira chuckled quietly. Sounds peaceful. It is. Mostly. He looked down at the drawing again. Sometimes I wish I could give her more. A bigger apartment, newer shoes. But she doesn't care about that. She just wants me to show up. Mira leaned her head back against the wall. I grew up in a tiny apartment. My mom worked nights. 2. Factory job. She used to leave little notes in my lunchbox. Brandon nodded. Those little things matter. Another pause. This one more comfortable than the last. You know, she said. For a guy with a mop, you talk like a therapist. He laughed. Comes with the job. Floors, lights, vents, vending machines, emotions. I clean it all. She smiled fully. This time, that's not bad. Brandon looked up at the panel. The elevator was still frozen. No movement, no updates. Think help's on the way? 8. Probably eventually. She sighed. Of all the places to get stuck. I had a contract call at 9, he said, settling onto the floor. Might as well make the most of it. To his surprise, Mira joined him, sitting across with her back against the opposite wall. You ever get tired of it all? He asked. Sometimes. The pressure, the non-stop meetings, the pretending. She shrugged. What? But I built this company. It's hard to let go. Maybe you don't have to let go. Maybe just look around. A little more. Mira looked at him thoughtfully. Maybe. They sat there, two people from opposite sides of the building, sharing silence, stories, and a stuck elevator. Neither of them knew yet that the day was far from over, and neither could guess how a simple glitch would turn into a turning point. But it had already started. Right there on the wrong morning, at exactly the right time, the elevator was still stuck. No signals, no sound, no update from anyone outside. The silence that once felt awkward had now become a space for something unexpected. Connection. Mira sat on the floor, her legs crossed and jacket folded beside her. Brandon sat opposite her, the drawing still in his lap. Every so often, he looked at it and smiled, as if it reminded him why he kept showing up, even when life felt heavy. She really drew that? Mira asked, nodding at the paper. Yeah, Brandon said with a grin. Last night, before bed. She said it was her version of a superhero team. Just you two? Just us, he replied. After her mom passed, it's been me and her. Against the world, Mira looked at the ceiling for a moment. Her sharp, no-nonsense face softened. That must be hard. Some days are harder than others, Brandon admitted, but she's strong. Smarter than me in most ways. She's the one who holds me together. Kids are like that, she said quietly. They surprise you? There was a pause. This time, not from discomfort, but from understanding. Brandon shifted his weight and looked at her. What about? You any kids? Mira shook her head. No, just me. My mother raised me alone too. She worked overnight shifts at a textile plant. I didn't see much of her growing up, but I knew she was trying. Did she get to see what you built? Mira's eyes dropped for a second. No. She passed before my first company took off. Cancer. She never saw my name on a building. I think she'd be proud. Brandon nodded. She would be. Funny, Mira said. This is probably the first real conversation I've had in weeks. No pressure. No suits. No pretending to be perfect. Maybe you needed the elevator to break down, Brandon joked. She laughed. It wasn't a forced, polite laugh. It was real. So tell me more about Nina, she said. Brandon lit up. She loves science. Built a volcano last week that nearly ruined the carpet. She names everything. The vacuum is Mr. Roomba. My mop is Buster. She talks to the toaster like it's alive. Mira smiled. Sounds like someone who sees magic in ordinary things. Yeah, he said proudly. Does. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small container. Inside was a sandwich, slightly smashed but neatly wrapped. Want half? He asked. Sure, she said, surprised they shared the sandwich and some laughs. Brandon told stories about his time doing odd jobs, everything from birthday party magician to overnight parking lot guard. Each job had a story. Each story had a moment where he almost gave up. But he never did. Myra shared stories too. It's about her early startup failures. About sleeping in her office on a beanbag chair. About the day she first realized that people treated her differently. The moment she added CEO to her title. Do you ever miss being just ... a person? Brandon asked. Every day, she said. They sat in silence again. Not because they had nothing to say, but because sometimes the quiet holds meaning too. Then Brandon noticed something. A faint smell. Burnt. Plastic. He sniffed the air again and turned his head toward the panel above them. Do you smell that? He asked. Myra nodded. Yeah, like something's overheating. Brandon stood up and walked to the panel near the top of the wall. It was warm to the touch. This isn't just a glitch, he said. Something's wrong with the backup system. Mira stood beside him. You know what to do? I think so, he said. But I'll need your help. She raised an eyebrow. I wear heels, not tool belts. Today you're doing both, he said with a grin. He opened the emergency panel using a key he carried on his badge ring. Behind it, wires and switches blinked unevenly. One of the fuses was glowing faintly red. That's not normal, Brandon muttered. He explained what needed to be done. Mira listened carefully. He guided her hand to hold a pair of insulated wires while he reached for the emergency bypass switch. Careful, he said. Keep them steady. If we reroute the current, it might reset the power to the control board. She followed his instructions, steady and focused. Minutes passed. Sweat trickled down both their faces. Now, Brandon said, flip the green switch on my count. 1, 2, 3. A click. The lights flickered. The fans kicked back on. The elevator made a low hum. And then, movement. The floor number ticked slowly upward. They had done it. Mira exhaled deeply. We're moving. Brandon smiled. We didn't die. That's a win, she laughed, wiping her forehead. You're more than a janitor, Brandon. You're more than a CEO, he replied. As the doors opened on the ground floor, 2 fire crew members stepped forward, blinking at the sight of them, one in a suit with smudges on her face. The other with a dusty uniform and duct tape on his fingers. Neither said anything. But both had changed. Not because of the smoke, not because of the wires, but because of the stories. They shared in the quiet, and something small but powerful had started to grow, not quite friendship, not yet trust, but something that felt a little like both. The elevator slowly started to move again, creaking gently as it descended. Mira and Brandon stood side by side, still catching their breath. Both were covered in a fine layer of dust, sweat clinging to their foreheads. The emergency lights flickered. Once more, then steadied. Neither of them spoke for a while. It wasn't just relief that filled the space. It was something deeper, something unspoken. Brandon looked at the control panel. The screen was still dark, but the buttons had started to glow faintly again. They were getting power back, but it wasn't full. Not yet. We're not out of this, he said quietly. Mira turned to him. What do you mean? The buildings. Backup grid is unstable, he explained. I've seen this before during a test run. If we don't isolate the surge now, it could cause a cascade failure. You think the whole building could shut down? She asked. Maybe worse, he said. Fires can start inside the ventilation system if a surge hits the climate circuits. Mira's expression changed. The confident CEO look returned. This time, it wasn't about control. It was about responsibility. What do we need to do? She asked. We need to access the sub-panel near the service hatch, Brandon said. But it's above us. We have to climb. Mira raised an eyebrow. In this elevator? Got a better idea? He asked. She took off her heels. Let's go. Brandon pried open the emergency ceiling panel, using a metal hook from the side compartment. It groaned, but gave way. He boosted Mira up first, then climbed after her. Above them was a narrow space, filled with wires, ducts, and blinking control boards. The smell of burnt plastic was stronger now. There, Brandon pointed. That's the pressure relay. It's glowing red. We have minutes. What happens if we don't fix it? She asked. It could blow the main power and lock everyone inside every system. Elevators, doors, even ventilation. Mira nodded. Tell me what to do. Brandon pulled out a utility knife from his belt pouch. It was old, but reliable.
Ow.
He began cutting a panel loose and exposed a set of colored wires. Green, blue, red, he said. When I say now, connect the green to the blue terminal. Not before. Mira crouched beside him, hands steady. You've done this before? She asked. No, he admitted, but I've studied the building schematics for years. Cleaned. Behind every panel, I know this layout like the back of my hand. She gave him a glance that held more respect than words could say. Ready, she said. Double quotes now. Loud click echoed through the shaft. For a second, everything went dark again, then the fans roared to life. The wires stopped glowing red. The panel lights blinked green. They did it. They climbed back down into the elevator just as the doors opened on the ground floor. Firefighters and security were waiting, startled to see the pair covered in soot. One officer asked if they were hurt. "Just tired," Brandon said with a weak smile. Mira nodded. "We handled it." The firefighters moved in to check the shaft. The building's emergency crew followed. Someone took photos, but neither Mira nor Brandon cared. They were too busy looking at each other, not in shock, not in confusion, but with a quiet understanding that something important had just happened. Brandon walked through the lobby, holding Nina's drawing close. Mira walked beside him, her hair a mess and her blazer draped over her arm. People stared. They didn't care. At the exit, Mira paused. "Come in tomorrow at noon," she said. "I work nights." Brandon replied. "You'll want to be there," she said. "Trust me." He nodded. "Okay." "Bring Nina," she added with a smile. The next day, Brandon showed up at the Tyra building, freshly shaved and wearing his cleanest shirt. Nina walked beside him in a pink dress with a backpack full of crayons. They were led to the 22nd floor. A floor he had cleaned dozens of times but never seen during the day. Mira stood at the front of a conference room, surrounded by board members and architects. "This is Brandon Hale," she said to the room. "He's not just a janitor. He's the reason we didn't lose power yesterday. And today I'm asking him to help lead something new." Brandon blinked. "Lead?" Mira smiled. "Yes. I'm starting a program called Voices of the Ground. Real input from the people who actually work in these buildings. Janitors, cooks, night guards. We're redesigning how we think about smart buildings, and you're going to help us." Brandon looked at Nina. She gave him a thumbs up. He turned. Back to Mira. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure," she said. He stepped forward. Not as a janitor, not as a helper, but as a man who had climbed through wires, smelled smoke, and made a choice. A choice to act, a choice to care, a choice to see people. And now, the building would never be the same. A month had passed since the elevator incident. But inside the Tyra building, something had shifted. Staff walked with more energy. The break rooms were cleaner. More voices were being heard. Brandon Hale had become more than a name in the background. He was now leading a new team called Voices of the Ground, just as Mira had promised. The team met twice a week in a glass-walled room on the 15th floor. There were janitors, cafeteria staff, overnight guards, and even delivery drivers. They shared real stories, real problems, and better ways to fix them. Brandon listened to every word. Then he helped turn those words into plans. He still worked. His night shifts at times, sweeping floors and wiping down windows. But now, he also wore a badge that said Project Consultant. He didn't care about titles. He cared that Nina noticed he came home earlier. She loved telling her friends that her dad worked with the boss. Sometimes, she even called him Mr. Important. Mira kept her promise, too. She showed up every Friday afternoon at Brandon's place, with takeout and art supplies. Nina loved her visits. She made her macaroni art. She showed her science experiments. Aunt Mira Nina had started calling her at first. It surprised Brandon, but Mira never corrected it. She liked the name. Their friendship had grown slowly, not forced or rushed. They had lunch together once a week, sometimes in the cafeteria, sometimes on the roof. They talked about the program, but also about life. Brandon told her about Nina's first sleepover. Mira told him about the lake cabin she hadn't visited in years. They laughed more now, sometimes over coffee, sometimes over spilled paint from Nina's latest project. It wasn't romance. Not yet, but it was something warm, something steady, and it mattered. One afternoon, Brandon walked into the office to find a new proposal on his desk. It had his name on the front. Inside, detailed plans for a full building redesign, one that included wellness rooms for night staff, easier access points for janitorial teams, and better emergency controls. His ideas were in there, his notes, his voice. He stared at the pages. Not fully believing what he was seeing, Myra walked in quietly. "This is yours," she said. "I just gave it a cover." He looked at her. "You really think it's worth all this?" "I think it's worth more," she replied. "You showed me what we forgot to see. The people who hold this place together. He closed the folder. Thank you. Mira stepped closer. I was wrong about you when we met. I saw a janitor. What I missed was a leader, a father, someone who never gave up. Brandon smiled. We all miss things, even smart people. Shh. Laughed, especially smart people. That weekend, Mira joined them for a community event at Nina's school. There were booths and games, and Brandon helped set up tents while Nina showed Mira how to win at ring toss. It was simple. No suits, no big speeches, just 3 people eating snow cones under a tree. Myra hadn't felt that kind of peace in years that night. As Brandon walked her to her car, she stopped before getting in. I used to think success was just about the numbers, she said, about how far you could climb. And now? He asked. She looked at him, her expression soft. Now, I think it's about who's standing with you at the top. Brandon didn't say anything right away, didn't need to. The next morning, the Tyra building launched the People First redesign initiative, led by Brandon's team, made headlines in local news. Other companies started calling, asking for tours, but Brandon didn't care about the attention. He cared that Nina got to see her dad speak at the company town hall. She sat in the front row, legs swinging, her drawing folded in her backpack. He opened his speech with a story, not about wires or fires, but about a girl who believed her dad was a hero, and how sometimes the world just needs to slow down long enough to see the quiet heroes in plain sight. After the meeting, Mira stood beside him, proud, so she said, with a smile, "What's next? Mr. Important?" He looked around, at the staff, at the building, his daughter waving from across the room. Next, he said, we keep building the right way. Months later, the building had changed. But more importantly, the people inside it had changed. They smiled more, listened better, respected each other, and sometimes, if you passed by the break room on the 15th floor, you'd see a girl drawing pictures, a man reviewing blueprints, and a CEO holding a glue stick. No cameras, no headlines, just people. And it all started in a broken elevator, with a drawing, a story, and a choice.